Hi everyone, welcome to this short video on inspecting the sidereal calendar and the lunisolar calendar and 4 different cultures, and how the time of the equinox is really like the kickstarter for the year of all of these cultural festivals to really be doing their biggest celebrations. So there's a few things to take note of here. I also want to make mention of something important. This is the sidereal Vedic planner by the Science of Light that I've downloaded from their website for free. But they don't have all the time zones for the entire countries there. They just have the main generic time zones. So this one I've printed out, as you can see it says Singapore, but I'm in Bali. So to get the exact Bali time, we actually have to go to another resource of theirs, which is a digital online resource, which I'll put the link in the description below. And there you can plug in your exact location and you're going to get your exact time for when the moon enters the star signs and all of the other planetary alignments. And so you can see here, I'm starting to plug it in to my paper calendar because I like using paper calendars. I like colourful pens, and I like just being able to draw and make notes and stuff like that. Other people may prefer to just do it all digital. Then you don't have to bother with this kind of redoing process. But I do find in this kind of repeating and refining process, it helps me understand what I'm doing a lot more, because it's just through that repetition that that understanding does come. So what we're looking at here, ignore that for the moment, but you can see February the 28th, the moon enters Libra, which is my sidereal sign, and that happens at 23:28 p.m. Singapore time. But in Bali time, it's actually an hour ahead at 22:28. And this is going to be across the board, an hour difference between Bali and Singapore. So I've started to plug those in to my personal calendar. And this Gungshan day, I'm going to describe when we get up to April. So moving over into the month of Pisces, you can see here that the sun moves into Pisces on March the 14th. So if you've done my online course, you will know that the sun moves into the zodiac mid-month. It's always going to be around the 14th, 15th, 16th, even up to the 17th, sometimes the 13th. And that changes every month and every year. And that's why we have to keep updating ourselves with these calendars. And so the sun moves into Pisces, and then Pisces aligns with the spring equinox, because we're in the age of Pisces, on March the 20th. So the equinox, this is what I'm recommending as the start point of the year, which I've put in my online course. So if you really want to harmonize yourself with this voltage peaks and charges and discharges, to ensure that your microcosmic orbit of your practice is aligning with the macrocosmic orbit of the movement of the sun and the moon going around the earth, and which has a rhythm that we can slot ourselves into. If you want to slot yourself into that, it's really going to be much easier to just start whenever the moon comes into your star sign around the equinox. We've got an equinox in March, we've got an equinox in September. You can do either or, but as we'll see through this cultural exploration, all these different festivals are happening around this time. So for me, it really is the beginning of the year. So let's look up to March the 10th. So we've got Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is actually an Islamic festival where they will do fasting and prayer for the entire month. So this is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, and they follow the beginning and ending of their calendar by the new moon. And so they will measure their start days as the month begins when the crescent moon is sighted in the western sky after a new moon. And so that one circled in red there, you won't be able to see it on the diagram, but there is the crescent moon featuring there. And then we can see 28 to 30 days later, I haven't counted them specifically, but Ramadan ends on the new moon, and then this crescent will appear after that. So that's Ramadan. So what are they doing there? After sunset, they're allowed to eat, but all day during the daylight hours, they're fasting. Lots of other things going on there to inspect for more, I guess, codes that we can use for our sacred secretion practice. I like to just explore all of the different cultures because all of them have little pearls of wisdom. And then, so if we just follow the days down, we've got what's happening here, the Paschal full moon. So the full moon that occurs after the spring equinox is called a Paschal full moon, and that is really the beginning of the Christian festival called Easter. So you can see here that this year the Paschal full moon has a lunar eclipse occurring on it. And then 2 weeks following a lunar eclipse, we get a solar eclipse. This is a rule of eclipses, and there's usually 2 a year. So I haven't looked at the next one yet. There'll be another set of eclipses later in the year. And so then the Good Friday after the Paschal full moon, after the spring equinox, is the date of the crucifixion, the Easter festival. And then 2 days later, 2 to 3 days later, 1, 2, 3, 2.1, 2.5 to 3 days in the tomb, Jesus gets crucified and put in the tomb, the Golgotha, the skull, the upper dantian. And then he is resurrected. He dies and comes back to life. And that is what is Easter Sunday. So it's very interesting for me personally, and people that are of the sign of Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. You're really going to be in this window of Ramadan, equinox, Paschal full moon, Easter, and the eclipses. So very, very interesting time to have a sacred secretion moment, right? So then we can see that we're going to come down into the sun moving into Aries. Sun to Pisces, sun to Aries, 13th, 14th. This is 1 month. But this is, so reading this is basically the alignments with the sun and the zodiac. And this Islamic month is really the alignments of the moon phases. So they're different measurements for different calendars. So we can see the repeat of the last page of the last calendar. And then what we come into in the month of Aries, we move into the Hebrew festival of Passover and the 7 days of unleavened bread. Passover actually lasts 8 days, and within it is the 7 days of unleavened bread festival. So when I was researching for my book series, I've mentioned this in other videos, I really was wondering, like, what is the significance of the unleavened bread? What is unleavened bread? Why did the Jewish people go to such painstaking measures to get this leaven out of the household every year, to the point where they will not use utensils that have ever touched leaven? They've got a whole different crockery set, different cooking set, everything like that. And it just got me thinking, like, whoa, they go to a very big effort to get away from leaven at this time. So then exploring into leaven, I discovered that, leaven is what makes bread rise. It is a fungus bacteria that when it mixed in with sugar inside the bread mix, it produces carbon dioxide, which produces little bubbles, which makes the bread rise. And the byproduct of this alchemical process is ethanol is produced, and ethanol is alcohol. So George Carey is, recommending to us in his God-Man book to avoid alcohol in the time of the sacred secretion, because it will cut the mineral casing on the seed. So this is the reason why I've been deeming these 7 days as the 7 days of the sacred secretion. It's not just from when the moon enters your sign and leaves your sign into the next sign. It's actually taking 7 days to get into this sign. So what's the significance of this? Libra is my birth month. Capricorn is my conception month. So I was conceived in, the time period of Capricorn, which would have been about January, New Year's baby, probably. And so by the time I was in the womb for 40 weeks of gestation, assuming I had, a proper on-time birth, I popped out 9 months later in the sign of Libra. So you can see within the 7 days, respecting the 7 days, we're going from birth back to conception. So we're reversing, and maybe we're anti-aging in that process if we avoid not just leaven, but all grains forever. The Hebrew people are just doing the avoidance of the 5 grains in this time of the unleavened bread festival, but the Daoists are doing it all the time. So when you look into the Daoist practice of Neidan in alchemy, and you look into something called Bigu, B-I-G-U, it actually means, it translates as avoidance of grains, and the true Daoist will actually start doing very strong dietary practices. One of them is to do Bigu, avoidance of grains, and this has very, very across the board health reasons that, if you start incorporating this into your diet as a forever thing, not just for the 7 days of the Sacred Secretion, but, for every single day for the rest of your life, this is a really major player in anti-aging and just, across the board health, which I'll explain. So in the Taoist teachings, they teach us about Bigu, the avoidance of grains, and they also teach us about the 3 corpses and the 9 worms. So this is really talking about parasites that live in the body. The 3 corpses are located in the dantians, the upper, the middle, the lower, or the cauldrons. And then there's the 9 worms. They're sort of like an extra category of worms that feed off different bodily substances like blood and blood vessels and marrow and tissues and muscles and stuff like that. So to get these parasites out of the body is necessary to be able to do the Sacred Secretion, because these parasites not only take our nutrients, they will also cause us brain fog and all sorts of, thoughts that are imbalanced. They're basically things that you don't want in your body. It's worms, So doing a grain-free diet, especially in this time, but especially forever, while doing a parasite cleanse, eating certain herbs that will flush out the parasites, is going to greatly contribute into your seed production. And this is really what is taught by the Taoists. So avoiding the grains, because the grains feed the parasites. So to starve out the parasites, the 3 corpses and the 9 worms, stop eating grains, you stop giving them the food. So on the, biochemistry level of it all, looking into this article from Frontiers, they're really giving us some great insights into the damage that the grains are causing. So the 5 grains are like wheat, rye, oats, barley, corn. I think there's a few other ones in there. A grain is basically the fruit of a grass. It's the seed of a grass. So, there's a few sort of discrepancies in there with like what is a grain, what is not a grain. But also in this 7 days of unleavened bread festival, the kosher diet, they also avoid the 5 grains. So it's not just about the leaven, it's about the grains. So getting back to the biochemistry of the grains, when we ingest these grains, especially in wheat, and it's also found in milk, these ingested products, when they're digested, they actually release opioid-like substances. And what is an opioid? It's like heroin and morphine. So we have opioid receptors within our body, and when we eat these foods that can produce opioids, they will travel to the receptors, the opioid receptors in our body, and they will stimulate them, will block them up. And this will give us a high, and this will give us an addiction to the breads and the pastas and the donuts and the pizza and the rice and all of that stuff, and we will then, by getting addicted to them, we'll keep eating them, and when we keep eating them, it destroys our gut. So it will decrease the amount of microvilli inside the intestines. So the microvilli are essentially like finger-like hairs that project out into the intestines from the walls of the intestines, and they help, sort the food particles, and they help reabsorb the usable nutrients back into the bloodstream so they can be recycled and reused, and then sorting out the waste, and then the waste will travel from the small intestine into the large intestine to be collected as stool and evacuated out of the body. So the microvilli are really necessary to get these jobs done. But the wheat products, the grain products, they will actually destroy the microvilli and flatten it all out. So we have far less surface area to do all the sorting of nutrients from toxins. So that means we're going to have a less functional gut or intestines. And another thing that the grains do is they increase the gut permeability, which means there's going to be like little holes in the gut, and therefore the toxins, which are meant to be sent out into the large intestine, they get seeped back into the bloodstream. Then they can cross the blood-brain barrier and can also seep into the cerebral spinal fluid, which is our sacred secretion. So to have a clean sacred secretion, we need to not have grains at all. So the grains, long term are causing us gut problems, long-term problems like growths, tumours of the bowels and things like that. And then up in the brain, this is causing depression, and the study is showing that it's actually directly linked to schizophrenia. So very big mental imbalances can be caused by these grains, right? And so then, of course, the grains are feeding the parasites, the worms, the 3 corpses and the 9 worms, which the Taoists have already taught us about. And then it brings me to this Gongshun day. So Gongshun, it means wooden monkey. And in the Chinese calendar, it's a 60-year calendar. We've got the 12 animal zodiacs, and we've got the 5 elements. And for every one of those animals to meet every one of those elements, it will take 60 years. Because every year will be a different animal and a different element. For example, this year coming, in February the 10th, 2024, the Chinese New Year happens, and that is going to be transitioning from the water rabbit into the wood dragon. And so we get this elemental quality of wood and this elemental quality of the dragon in terms of all these different archetypes that can represent, which I will not go into. And so that's kind of like a macrocosmic happening, that 60-year cycle of the calendar of the new year. But then on the microcosmic cycle, we have every single different day of the Chinese calendar will have a different element and a different animal. So on this particular day, the Gongshun day, the wooden monkey, it happens every 57 days. So in 2 months' time, on a day, this day will repeat in every 2 months. And what is the significance of this in Taoism and the Neidan teachings of the inner alchemical processes? Is that the Taoists teach that on this night, the Gongshun day, night, this is when the worms, the 3 corpses, the consciousness of these parasites will leave the body, and they will go up to the heavenly realms, and they will meet with the gods who are in charge of the human's fate, and they will report to the gods all of the misdeeds of the humans for the period of the 57 days. And so the Taoists say that if you don't sleep on this night and you stay up all night, then those worms and corpses cannot leave your body, and they therefore cannot go and report on you and tell on you. So it's kind of like a cheat. So to avoid being tattletaled on to the gods, you stay awake all night. And what's the punishment if you've done misdeeds, according to the Taoist teaching, is that the gods will take minutes, days, or years off your life. So this is really a nice poetical way of saying the eating of grains feeds the parasites who report back to the gods who delete days and years off your life, which is really saying if you eat grains, you'll have a short life, and if you don't eat grains, you have a long life. So I have not practiced this yet. I'm going to get into it in February, because I think that's when the first Gungshan day of the year is, February the 26th in Bali time. And that's the day to stay up all night. And it's interesting because this one's just before my Sacred Secretion time, and this one is during the festival of the unleavened bread. During the space between the ascension and the resurrection, just after Ramadan, just after the eclipses. So all in all, it's going to be a fun few months. So yeah, I encourage you to start playing around with all of this stuff. A lot of the stuff that that I'm describing here, I've actually got, it's like a sneak peek into my 4th book, that I'm just sort of uncovering all of these interesting alignments. So stay tuned for that. It's taking me a lot longer than I expected, but all things do take good time. And there's going to be a lot of stuff in there for really just the diet and the cleansing and the practice of the Sacred Secretion. So anyway, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.